Hey friends, welcome to my city stuga, my city cottage. Today I'm going to be making the Holyoke Maxi Dress. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more sew-alongs, crafts, and city life.
This is a Cashmerette pattern, a great plus-size pattern maker.
The version I'm making today is a muslin or mock-up with a special twist at the end. While I'll eventually make something in this blue color, today I'm going to be using this green microfiber fitted sheet. I'll be following the directions for the maxi length dress, but mine will be shorter. I would rate this pattern as intermediate because while it can feel technical at times, those instances feel very straightforward. You can start to see that with the amount of interfacing and facings I'm cutting out here. There are facings in the front bodice and the back, as well as a generous amount of interfacing along the placket, where you'll be adding the decorative button. There's also an elastic component as well for the waistband, which replaces the typical zipper that you might see in a piece like this. I'm arranging my facings here to make sure I have everything that I need. One cutting note I will add is I do feel that the strap pieces had a heavier curve, which I felt made it too round for my own shoulders. That roundness manifested in a slightly looser fit in the final product, so I would pay attention to the parts of your body that are not as curvy and be prepared to make adjustments. Let's take a look at the instructions to get a better idea of what we're working with here. There's 13 total pieces of fabric cut out. Some of them are interfaced. We'll start with the front bodice, and this is a French seam, and I found that it was very easy to get the right curvature without a lot of puckering with my microfiber fabric. The waistband is interfaced and fully closed, both the front and the back, which supports having the elastic in the back. The pockets are pretty typical for what I've sewn in previous dresses with Cashmerette patterns as well as other brands. The technique relies on 4 pocket pieces, 2 being sewn to the front skirt and then 2 being sewn in the back to eventually be joined together. You can better see the construction of the straps here and the curvature that it gives. It's meant to really hug your shoulders in a nice way. The straps will end up sandwiched between the bodice and the bodice facing, which creates a really smooth look and feel when you're wearing the garment. You will do some top stitching of the bodice as well to help keep that facing in place and give it a smooth look. The back is square, and I felt it fit my back very well, and I tend to have trouble with not being able to fill out the backs of patterns, if that makes sense. I often find that when I size up standard size patterns or work with other patterns, the back of a dress or a shirt can often be loose at my high back, and so I really appreciated that this pattern worked from the get-go, and I really didn't have to make any changes to it after I made the muslin. If you've made it to this step, you're in the home stretch. Again, this is a lot of building the front and the back and then bringing it together, first at the straps and then together at the sides. It gives very easy and clear instructions for doing the front facings and bringing that together with the back. And then you move on to building the plackets. And I do really love that you can make real buttonholes if you want to spend all that time, or you can keep it closed up and just use decorative buttons. Okay, let's sew. In this chapter, I am sewing together both of the front bodice pieces. This is the curvy part, so I'm going to be using a princess seam to get that curvature and that nice smooth line going around my chest. I put my right sides together of my 2 bodice pieces, and I am sewing at the seam allowance in the pattern, which is 5/8 inches. I'm keeping a careful hand on both ends to make sure that the fabric lays flat and there's no puckering going on, and it worked out really well. I do again attribute this to the microfiber sheet that I was using, so just be careful, go slow. It's okay if there's a little pucker like this. You can go back and fix it or even smooth it out on your ironing board. Let's do the next side. Again, I'm going to take my time here and just slowly move it through. Make sure I'm holding both ends and keeping an eye on them. Now that we're done with both sides of the front bodice, we can add the waistband. I pinned the front waistband piece that has interfacing right sides together with my bodice. I'm putting it in my machine with the wrong side of the bodice facing up and the bodice facing underneath. Now let's do the other side. I'm having on this side the facing up and the bodice on the bottom. This is what it looks like when you have the piece sewn on. I've now taken my unlined waistband and sandwiched the bodice front between that and the interface waistband, sewing on both sides of the front bodice. By sandwiching the bodice front between these two waistband pieces, you'll be able to make a fully enclosed waistband and a nice clean finish on both the inside and outside. I'm just working on the other side of my front bodice here and going to sew that up. You can see here again how the front waistband piece is flat and interfaced. I'm now going to move on to sewing the front skirt and attaching the pockets by sewing together the skirt side front and the skirt center front. This is pattern pieces 4 and 5. I have them right sides together and I am doing a straight stitch. I'm now starting on the other side with the other skirt side front and the skirt center front. I'm now going to put my pockets on, starting with the skirt right front. As you can see, the interfacing there for the future placket. And I've added the pockets matching up the markings from the pattern and pinning it on. And here is the other side, again matching up those markings. And let's get started. I'm only going to be sewing the pockets themselves on here, using a straight stitch and then moving on to adjust my machine to a zigzag stitch. Once I've added my pocket and finished the side seam, I am going to fold the pocket out, press, and then go ahead and understitch the pocket to the seam allowance. This will help keep the pocket inside when you are wearing your dress or your skirt. The understitching is important because it will keep the pocket from flapping out or wrinkling out when you're wearing the dress or the skirt. It helps give it a nice flat lay on the body. With the right side pocket done, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the left side here. Sewing it down first and getting that attachment between the markings, and then finishing that seam together before I fold out and understitch. With the pockets done, it's now time to sew the front skirt to this front bodice. Again, the front bodice pieces are still separated, so you're sewing the front bodice on the right to the front skirt right, and then again the left front bodice with the left front skirt. Once your bodice front is attached to your front skirts, you can go ahead and trim the seam allowance of the waistband to 1/4 inch and press up towards the waistband. You'll go ahead and flip the waistband facing down to enclose the waistband seam. You can use a hand needle and slip stitch to sew the waistband shut, or you can stitch in the ditch from the right side, which is what I chose to do. Next step is sewing and attaching the bodice straps. So I have the front strap and the back strap here, and they will be sewn together, folded over, flipped inside out, and then be ready to attach to the dress. With my right sides together, I sew at the allotted seam allowance and I repeat with the second set of strap pieces. Then it's time to move on to the second shoulder strap set. With the 7 and 8 pieces sewn together, you're going to fold them in right sides together to create that long strap piece before sewing. Now I'm going to trim the seam allowances of the strap to make it easier to fold, and then go ahead and sew my second strap. To turn the straps inside out, I'm going to use a bodkin to hold one end in place and then pull through the strap slowly and carefully here. So you can see the fabric just bunches up over the bodkin. It has a pretty firm grip on the end, so it acts as an anchor and something that you can really pull against to undo the strap, as you can see here. I really love using the bodkin. You can get it at most sewing shops. I will also include a link in the description of the video if you're interested. It makes this process way faster and way less frustrating. You can see it has the little teeth here and the adjustment to have it tighten onto the fabric, but then when you're ready to take it off, you can just slide that back and remove your fabric without injury. It's now time to add one strap to the front bodice, aligning the edge of the strap with the notch that you made from your pattern, and the seam side will face the arm side, so just keep that in mind and make sure you sew at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm now pinning the second strap to the second bodice front, and then I will start sewing. Since they're still separated, I pinned both first, and then I'm sewing one side at a time. It's now time to add the facings. Before you sew them on, you do need to fold the seam allowance on the curved edge of the front facing to the wrong side. Clip into the curve to make sure it lays flat when you press, and then you can top stitch the edge from the right side. So that's what I'm doing here. I've clipped it, I've pressed it over to the wrong side, and now I'm just doing a top stitch. I'm using the same color thread so it will blend in pretty seamlessly, and this is something that's only going to be inside, so you won't see it from the outside. I'm now doing my second front facing, top stitching that pressed hem. With the front facings prepped, it's now time to attach it to the bodice. What you're doing is you're leaving the shoulder strap down and sandwiching it between the front facing as well as the front bodice. So it's going to create this beautiful encasement that you can flip to the right side once you're finished sewing. So as you can see, the right side of my facing is with the right side of my bodice front, and then the strap is just kind of hanging out there in the middle, sandwiched between the two layers. You want to make sure that everything lies flat as you're working along this edge here, and make sure you follow the seam allowance really closely to get really crisp corners when you fold everything right side out. And here's one of those sides. This is what it looks like when you fold it right side out. You can see the strap is free and there's this beautiful finish on the front and the inside of the bodice. Now to repeat the process on the other side of the bodice front. I'm now going to top stitch the bodice in the facing to keep it flat against my body and to prevent any puckering and weird lumps where the facing meets the bodice. The pattern itself has you doing an understitch as an option of the seam allowance, but with my color thread matching, I decided to just do a top stitch between the shoulder strap and the middle of the front bodice, so that piece where it's interfaced for the future button placket. I'm also going to top stitch here between the shoulder strap and the underarm to again keep it flat, especially with this muslin fabric that I'm using, this mock-up fabric. It is a microfiber sheet. It is kind of thin and has a lot more movement to it than something that is a heftier weight fabric like a heavy cotton or some other fabric. With this done, I'm going to repeat this top stitching on the other side here for the same impact. We're moving right into sewing the bodice back by pinning the bodice side back to the bodice center back at the side seam, right sides together and matching the notches. I'm sewing these pieces together, finishing the seam allowance if you so choose, and then pressing towards the center. I'm then going to repeat that with the second bodice side back on the second side of the bodice center back. I'm attaching here the second bodice side back to the bodice center back. With my bodice back together, I'm starting to imagine how it goes with the bodice front, but before we do anything there, we need to add the waistband to the back. This is where we're going to be looping the elastic through, and similar to the construction of the front waistband, I'm using the back waistband, attaching it right sides together with the back bodice piece now fully formed, and I will then be adding the facing for this waistband as well. With the first facing piece on, you can see kind of how it will look like, and now I'm going to add the interfacing of the waistband. I am sandwiching my back bodice pieces between the two facings. This is just like the front bodice. And so I am sewing everything together here with the back bodice sandwiched between both facings. I now have both the waistband pieces attached, and you can see here how they come together. Like the front bodice, I'm going to trim those seam allowances down. I'm I'm leaving the back bodice and waistband for a moment to sew together the back skirt and attach the pockets. I'm pinning together here the skirt side back, which is piece 14, to the skirt center back, which is piece 13. Right sides together, making sure I'm matching my notches, and then I'm going to go ahead and sew and finish the seam allowance before pressing it toward the center. Now it's time to sew the other skirt side back to the skirt center back. And just like the front, I'm going to be attaching my pockets to the skirt side back between the notches, making sure everything lines up so that when I put the front skirt with the back skirt, the pockets are in alignment and will not be off kilter. With one pocket on, it is time to move on to the next, getting everything pinned in place before sewing on the pocket. I'm now doing the pocket on the other side of the back part of the skirt. And once you have the pockets sewn on, don't forget to understitch them to the seam. I was not able to get attaching the back skirt to the back bodice on film, but like the front, you attach the right sides together, matching the notches and making sure you're only pinning the outer waistband to the skirt. You want that waistband facing open. As you can see here, I have it pinned down once everything is sewn together. Now that it's pinned down, I'm now sewing the waistband in the ditch to attach the bodice back and skirt together. I'm stitching in the ditch here to bring that waistband together. With the bodice back and skirt together and now the waistband facing attached through stitching in the ditch, I can now add my elastic. I have decided to use a ruler and my fabric marker to mark the line where I need to sew into the elastic. I used a bodkin to thread my elastic, and since my elastic is not longer than my fabric, I have elected to do one zigzag stitch instead of the recommended 2 in the pattern. With that done, it's time to attach the back bodice to the shoulder straps. We're getting so close. With the shoulder straps attached to the back, it's time to move on to the back facing. Again, we folded in the seam allowances to the wrong side and we are top stitching everything in place here. This is the back facing. It will be inside just like the front bodice facing. I'm laying out this back facing piece and lining it up with my back bodice. Again, I'm going to be sandwiching the shoulder straps between this back facing and the bodice itself. Now it's time to pin it all together and get it ready to sew. With the shoulder straps already being attached to the front bodice, I want to make sure that they stay flat here as I'm sewing them onto the back bodice and back facing. So I'm going to be going very carefully, just making sure nothing gets bunched up or twisted. I'm top stitching this back bodice after turning it inside out, or right side out rather, and I'm just top stitching between the two shoulder straps to help give it some crispness and help keep the facings from coming out. The pattern says to understitch, but again, as this is a mock-up for me, I decided to just do a top stitch and appreciate the fact that my thread matched my fabric so well. We're finally ready to sew the side seams, and I'm starting here on what will end up being the left side. So just moving through here and sewing it together, right sides together, keeping an eye on those pockets. I'm going to be pivoting the dress as I get to the pockets to keep up with the curve, but it will end up looking very seamless at the end. Go slow here at the pocket so you can see how I follow the curve along. With my pins in place, I try to keep everything together as long as possible, only removing when I need to. As you can see, my cuts were not entirely perfect on these pocket pieces, so there is some discrepancy in the seam allowance. But even if you did a very generous seam allowance with the pockets themselves, they are still fairly roomy and can hold a cell phone, a wallet, things like that. I'm moving on now to the other side, being very mindful of the pocket again. With the sides of the dress sewn together, front and back, it's time to sew the front plackets. So before I got started on this, I folded the long edge of the front dress to the wrong side by 1/2 inch, and I pressed it and then folded over again by 1 1/4 inches before pressing again. The placket ends up enclosing the end of the front facing, which helps keep that front facing in the bodice from flipping out and also creates a cleaner look to the dress. When I was folding the long edge of the front dress to the wrong side, I did use the interfacing that I added as a guide. With both plackets done, it's time to layer them on top of each other. I did the right placket over the left placket, and I'm starting my sewing at the waistband in the front and working up toward the top of the bodice. I'm really happy with how the top bodice came out. Everything aligned very well, and I am ready to move on to the rest of the front. I love how this front seam came out. I can often struggle to keep things in alignment, but this was super easy. And now that that's done, it is time to move on to the hem. Since my version of the dress is shorter than the pattern, I just kind of pressed where I thought for the hem. But if you're following the pattern, you want to do a 1-inch fold to the wrong side and press, and then fold again by 1.5 inches and press again, top stitching from the right side. Are you ready for the twist on this mock-up? Since you've made it this far, I'll share it with you. I decided to turn this into the dress. I had this beautiful ribbon that I had purchased in Germany when I initially visited my sister, and I knew it would be perfect to cover up just some minor imperfections in my front waistband, and I felt like it would really give it a look that felt like a German dirndl. It would not be an exact representation for sure, but it would have that spirit. It makes it feel folksy and summery and perfect to wear to a wedding, which is what I ended up doing with this dress. I guess that's the second twist, is this dress that was supposed to be just a mock-up ended up being what I wore as a guest to my oldest sibling's wedding. Back to the instructions. If you do want to do a decorative ribbon on the front bodice piece like this, as you can see, I had folded my ends of the ribbon end and I had sewn over that to secure it in place, and then used lots of pins. I left them in the middle, as you can see, to help keep everything in place, and I just went really slow. I was trying to follow the pattern design that this ribbon has. You can kind of see it has this dark border almost, and so I was trying to follow that as close as I could to make the construction as seamless and beautiful as possible. I sewed the one side of my ribbon to the dress and everything looked great, so now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the second side. I left that little extra at the end just so that I wouldn't end up with a slightly short ribbon and not lining up with the seams on the side. I really wanted to make sure that the ribbon almost blended into the side seams. So leaving that little extra on the end helped me make sure that the fit was perfect, and I just cut off the extra. I made sure I left enough to tuck the end in, just like the other side, so that it would be a clean attachment to the dress itself. Once I had the long end sewn on, I turned it to the side and sewed in both ends of the ribbon. I'm so happy how this came out. I ended up making a shirt to wear underneath to add to the medieval theme to fit the wedding. And here it is. I'm so proud of what I was able to do, and no one could tell that this was just a mock-up. Thank you for joining me on this Holyoke Maxi Dress sew along. I'm so glad you could join me in my city stuga. I'll see you next time.